2 pieces of maple. You could use anything you want. I've milled them a strong 1/2 inch thick, and I'll go through the finish process here with the same type of finish I've used on my vessel. Before removing the vessels from the lathe, I've got to get a groove on the inside for the shelf supports. There's probably several ways to do this. In my case, I used a little detail tool and a thin parting tool. But however you do it, you've got to get a groove that will fit this shelf material that's been prepared. Now I'm cutting a sample of that shelf material to use as a gauge so that I can sneak up on a nice snug fit. Not too super tight, but a snug fit. Before taking it off, I'm going to do one more buffing. This is a well-worn 320 sanding mop. Just takes a little bit of the shine off the surface. A parting tool cut now to remove it. Now this is about 3/4 of an inch thick. Kind of hard to gauge. It's kind of a big awkward piece to try to catch. Wouldn't be too safe. I don't want to risk dropping it. So I'm drilling a hole there that I can inspect from time to time. And once I've got, just 1/8 of an inch of wood left, I'll, remove it with the saw. The saw cut's kind of rough. It's a little high there in the center, so I'm just knocking that, the sides of the kerf that were left. Checking it for nice flatness. Now I'm going to cut this in half. I want my bandsaw blade to be, precisely 90 degrees to the table. So by making a curve cut, flipping this parallel board over, making another curve cut right next to it, checking the parallelness of those 2 cuts, that confirms that I'm at dead on 90 degrees. Pretty important. But before cutting these apart, there's one more important step, and that is to measure the inside diameters of those grooves that were cut. We need to be able to precisely cut the shelf pieces. Using 2 pieces of veneer and that piece of tape, that gives me a pretty accurate measurement. This particular one, the large one, measures a little over 13 inches. I've lined out blue tape here to give me a good guide for cutting this in half, and I'm just slowly cutting down the edge of this blue tape. I've put a paper towel on my table so I don't scratch my finish. Just go slow and easy and try to make a nice straight cut. Getting a nice flat surface is pretty easy if you've got a big 20-inch disc sander. It just takes 30 seconds or less probably. Now if you don't have this luxury, you're going to have to go at this by hand, taking some 80 grit and sticking it to a nice flat surface and doing some handwork. There's one more step to do to the large vessel form. The base needs to be covered up. I've taken a disc of maple about 6.5 inches in diameter, turned a tenon, mounted it in my chuck so I can hollow out the other side and do a fit up on the bottom of that vessel form. I'm just going to put a little dome base on this thing. Here I've transferred the measurement roughly. I'll hollow this out and sneak up on a nice snug fit with the vessel. Here's my diamond pointed scraper that you've seen me use many times. Here's the final fit up. It fits nice and snug. I'll sand this part of it while I've got easy access. Then use the chuck in expanding mode, reverse it around, and just round this up to a nice pleasing curve. The exact shape and size of this end cap makes little difference. It's all up to you what you want it to look like. Here I've just made a very simple dome that'll fit on the bottom. A little shear scraping, a little sanding, and this will be ready to cut apart and put on my shelves. I've drawn some half circles matching those diameters that I measured using the veneer strips. These will fit into those slots that were turned in the vessel forms, and it takes a little work to get them to fit just right. I don't want them super tight. When they're all assembled, I want there to be a little air gap around those inside the groove. So it takes a little time to get those situated just right. I'm not going to glue them in place. They'll only be held by the screws that come in from the back of the mounting plate. Now here's the mounting plate. I've started off with a piece of MDF about 16 inches wide, which is a couple inches wider than my widest half piece. I've drawn a grid of lines to help me align these nice and straight and level. I'll use whatever it takes to get these nice and centered on there. With my three pieces all properly centered and level, I'll do an outline around the entire perimeter. This is my method of determining where to put the screw holes. These will all be mounted from the back side using number 6 screws, about 1 3/4 inches long. So I've got my outline. Now I'm positioning the screws so that I'm not on a seam in between rings. Just a number of screws on this big one. There'll be 3 on each side, and then probably 3 across the top, holding the back edge of the shelf. So I've gone around, located everything. Now it's a matter of drilling some holes and getting this thing ready to put together. I'll drill what holes I can using a drill press, and then for the holes that are too close to the middle or too far from the edge, I'll use a little block of wood as a little bit of a guide to drill perpendicular holes. Get them all drilled. Now I'm going to start to do my mounting. I put that stick of MDF on there just as a temporary shelf, and these big rubber bands will help hold this in place while I do a little bit of drilling from the back side. I get it right on my outline, come in from the back, and complete the process one after the other. So my 3 pieces are all mounted. They're all secured with wood screws. It's a temporary, but now it's time to put this bottom cap on. A little sanding to get it to lie nice and flat, and I'll outline so I can determine my screw hole locations, and I'll mount this from the back. With everything in place, now it's a matter of doing an outline around this. I've got an extra large washer. With my pencil inside the opening of the washer and rolling the washer along the edge, I'll get a very even perimeter, about 3/4 inch away from the edge, all the way around this. This is going to be my final shape of the backing, the MDF. So I'll go all the way around this and then have to take everything off. To make sure all my surfaces fit together snugly, all these holes need to have a little countersink. Wood tends to bulge when you drive or screw into it. So that little countersink prevents that little wood bulge from interfering with a nice flat fit when I reassemble this. Regarding the cutout, obviously I'm using a bandsaw. I won't be able to get into all the corners because of the overall size of this. My biggest tip is stay outside of the pencil line. You can always sand off or cut off more, but once you go inside that pencil line, you've destroyed the curve. So take your time, be very careful, but stay outside the pencil line. Here I'm using my disc sander for all the convex surfaces that I can reach, just to sneak up on that pencil line. And then I'll use a spindle sander, a oscillating sander, to get into some of those corners. Again, I'm just trying to sneak up on the pencil line. And as you might suspect, there's a little bit of handwork to do, trying to get this edge all smooth. On the back side, I'm putting a very slight radius using a small router bit. On the front side, I'll put a bigger radius curve on that edge. It's really up to you how you want this to look. A little more sanding. Now, MDF is very porous stuff, especially on the exposed edges. So I'm sealing it up with sanding sealer, a couple of coats of sanding sealer on those edges to give me a fighting chance when I go to paint it. To hang this, I'm going to use what's called a French cleat. I've done a recess here with my router, and I put a tapered edge using a dovetail bit on this top edge. This recess with the tapered edge will fit on this cleat that I can screw onto a wall. It's got a matching beveled surface which prevents the whole unit from falling off the wall. It's a very effective way to hang something very flush without any exposed wires or anything like that. So this project's just about done. I'll put about 3 coats of this spray enamel. The edges will soak up the paint pretty good, and I'll do a little sanding on those edges in between coats. The reassembly is pretty basic. It's just a matter of reinstalling all the screws, and that's a pretty simple matter. For the other halves that were left over, I'm going to cut those into quarter sections and make 2 more corner style units. I won't go through every step. It's pretty much the same process that I've just gone through. A matter of quartering them, doing some sanding, doing some layout, just as I did before, except of course now it's at a right angle. Everything else is done pretty much the same way. One difference is I won't need a cleat on the back of this, just a angled hole for a nail that goes into the wall will work. So here's the first one that I did with the half vessel forms. It's been positioned on a wall between 2 windows and a hallway in our home. You've got unlimited options. You don't have to make it with 3 vessels. You could make it with 5 or more. You can change the wood species, whatever you want to do. Here's the other 2 pieces, the corner pieces. Obviously, I could have made 4 corners instead of 2 corners and 1 half piece. It's really up to you. Good luck and have fun with this if you try this type of project.